Chapter 7. A cutting from the Daily Graph, August 8th. Pasted in Mina Murray's journal from a correspondent. Whitby. One of the greatest and suddenest storms on record has just been experienced here, with results both strange and unique. The weather had been somewhat sultry, but not to any degree uncommon in the month of August. Saturday evening was as fine as was ever known, and the great body of holiday makers laid out yesterday for visits to Mulgrave Woods, Robin Hood's Bay, Rig Mill, Runswick, Saith's, and the various trips on the neighborhood of Whitby. The steamers Emma and Scarborough made trips up down the coast, and where there was an unusual amount of tripping both to and from Whitby. The day was unusually fine till the afternoon, when some of the gossips who frequent the East Cliff churchyard, and from the commanding eminence watch the wide sweep of sea visible to the north and east, call attention to a sudden show of mares' tails high in the sky to the northwest. The wind was then blowing from the southwest in mild degree, which in barometrical language is ranked number 2 light breeze. The Coast Guard on duty had once made a report, and one old fisherman, for who more than half a century has kept watch on the weather signs from the East Cliff, foretold in an emphatic manner the coming of a sudden storm. The approach of sunset was so very beautiful, so grand in its masses of splendidly colored clouds, that there was quite an semblance on the walk along the cliff on the old churchyard to enjoy the beauty. Before the sun dipped below the black mast of Kettleness, standing boldly athwart the western sky, its downward way was marked by a myriad of clouds of every sunset color, flame, purple, pink, green, violet, and all the tints of gold, with here and there masses not large but of seemingly absolute blackness in all sorts of shapes, as well outlined as the colossal silhouettes. The experience was not lost on the painters, and doubtless some of the sketches of Prelude to the Great Storm will grace R.A. and R.A. walls in May next. More than one captain made up his mind then and there that his cobble, or his mule, as they termed the different classes of boats, would remain in the harbor till the storm had passed. The wind fell away entirely during the evening, and at midnight there was a dead calm, a sultry heat, and that prevailing intensity which, on the approach of thunder, affects persons of sensitive nature. There were but few lights in sight at sea, for even the coasting steamers, which usually hugged the shore so closely, kept well to seaward, but few fishing boats were in sight. The only sail noticeable was a foreign schooner with all sails set, which was seemingly going westward. The foolhardiness or ignorance of her officers was a prolific theme for a comment which she remained in sight, and the efforts were made to signal her to reduce sail in the face of her danger. Before the night shut down, she was seen with sails idly flapping as she gently rolled on the undulating swell of the sea, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Shortly before 10 o'clock, the stillness of the air grew quite oppressive, and the silence was so marked by the bleating of the sheep inland or the barking of a dog in town was distinctly heard, and the band on the pier, with its lively French air, was like a discord in the great harmony of nature's silence. A little after midnight came a strange sound from over the sea, and high overhead the air began to carry a strange, faint, hollow booming. Then, without warning, the tempest broke, with a rapidity which at the time seemed incredible, and even afterwards it's impossible to realize the whole aspect of nature at once become convulsed. The waves rose in growing fury, each overtoppling its fellow, till in very few minutes the lately glassy sea was like a roaring and devouring monster. White crested waves beat madly on the level sands and rushed up the shelving cliffs. Others broke over the piers, and with their spume swept the lanthorns of the lighthouses, which rise from the end of either pier of Whitby harbor. The wind sounded like thunder, and blew with such a force that it was with difficulty that even strong men kept their feet, or clung with grim clasp to their iron sanctions. It was found necessary to clear the entire pier from the mass of onlookers, or else the fatalities of the night would have increased manifold. To add to the difficulties and dangers of the time, masses of sea fog came drifting inland, white, wet clouds which swept by in ghostly fashion, so dank and damp and cold that it needed but little effort of imagination to think that the spirits of those lost at sea were touching their living brethren with clammy hands of death, and many a one shuddered as the wreaths of the sea mist swept by. At times the mist cleared, and the sea for some distance could be seen in the glare of the lightning, which came thick and fast, followed by such peals of thunder that the whole sky overhead seemed trembling under the shock of the footsteps of the storm. Some of the scenes thus revealed were of immeasurable grandeur and of absorbing interest, the sea running mountains high through skyward with each wave mighty masses of white foam, which the tempest seemed to snatch at and whirl away into space. Here and there a fishing boat, with a rag of sail running madly for shelter before the blast. Now and again, the white wings of a storm-tossed seabird. On the summit of the east cliff, the new searchlight was ready for experiment, but had not yet been tried. The officers in charge of it got it into working order, and in the pauses of onrushing mist swept with it the surface of the sea. Once or twice its service was most effective, as when a fishing boat, with gunwale under water, rushed into the harbor, able by the guidance of the sheltering light to avoid the danger of dashing against the piers. As each boat achieved the safety of the port, there was a shout of joy from the mass of people on the shore, a shout which for a moment seemed to cleave the gale, and was then swept away in its rush. Before long, the searchlight discovered some distance away a schooner with all sails set, apparently the same vessel which had been noticed early in the evening. The wind had by this time backed to the east, and there was a shudder among the watchers on the cliff as they realized the terrible danger in which she now was. Between her and the port lay the great reef on which so many good ships have from time to time suffered, and with the wind blowing from its present quarter, it would be quite impossible that she should fetch the entrance of the harbor. It was now early the hour of high tide, but the waves were so great in that their troughs, the shallows of the shore, were almost visible, and the schooner, with all sails set, was rushing with such speed that, in the words of one old salt, she must fetch up somewhere if it was only in hell. Then came another rush of sea fog, greater than any hitherto, a mass of dank mist, which seemed so close on all things like a grey pall, and left available to men only the organ of hearing, for the roar of the tempest and the crash of the thunder and the booming of the mighty billows came through the damp oblivion even louder than before. The rays of the searchlight were kept fixed on the harbor mouth across the east pier where the shock was expected, and men waited breathless. The wind suddenly shifted to the northeast, and the remnant of the sea fog melted in the blast, and then, mirabile dictu, between the piers, leaping from wave to wave as it rushed at headlong speed, swept the strained schooner before the blast, with all sails set, and gained the safety of the harbor. The searchlight followed her, and a shudder ran through all who saw her, for lashed to the helm was a corpse, with drooping head, which swung horribly to and fro at each motion of the ship. No other form could be seen on the deck at all. A great awe came on as they realized that the ship, as if by miracle, had found the harbor, unsteered save by the hand of a dead man. However, all took place more quickly than it takes to write these words. The schooner paused not, but rushing across the harbor, pitched herself on that acclimation of sand and gravel washed by many tides and many storms into the southeast corner of the pier, jutting under the east cliff, known locally as Tate Hill Pier. There was of course a considerable concussion as the vessel drove up on the sand heap. Every spar, rope, and stay was strained, and some of the top hammer came crashing down. But strangest of all, the very instant the shore was touched, an immense dog sprang up on deck from below as if shot up by the concussion, and running forward, jumped from the bow on the sand, making straight for the steep cliff where the churchyard hangs over the laneway to the east pier so steeply that some of the flat tombstones, troughsteins, or through-stones, as they call them in Whitby vernacular, actually project over where the sustaining cliff has fallen away. It disappeared in the darkness, which seemed intensified just beyond the focus of the searchlight. It just so happened that there was no one at the moment on the Tate Hill Pier, as all those whose houses were in close proximity were either in bed or out on the heights above. Thus, the Coast Guard on duty on the eastern side of the harbor, who at once ran down to the little pier, was the first to climb aboard. The men working the searchlight, after scouring the entrance of the harbor without seeing anything, then turned the light on the derelict and kept it there. The Coast Guard ran aft, and when he came behind the wheel, bent over to examine it, and recoiled at once through under some sudden emotion. This seemed to pique general curiosity, and quite a number of people began to run. It is a good way round from the west cliff by the drawbridge to Tate Hill Pier, but your correspondent is a fairly good runner, and came well ahead of the crowd. When I arrived, however, I found already assembled on the pier a crowd whom the Coast Guard and police refused to allow to come on board. By the courtesy of the chief boatman, I was, as your correspondent, permitted to climb on the deck, and was one of the small group who saw the dead seaman was lashed to the wheel. It was no wonder that the Coast Guard was surprised, or even awed, for not often can such a sight have been seen. The man was simply fastened by his hands, tied over the other, to a spoke of the wheel. Between the inner hand and the wood was a crucifix. The set of beads on it was fastened, being around both wrists and wheel, and all kept fast by the binding cords. The poor fellow may have been seated at one time, but the flapping and buffeting of the sails had worked through the rudder of the wheel and had dragged him to and fro, so that the cords with which he was tied had cut the flesh to the bone. Accurate note was made of the state of things, and a doctor, Surgeon J. M. Caffin, of 33, East Elliott Place, who came immediately after me, declared, after making examination, that the man must have been dead for quite 2 days. In his pocket was a bottle, carefully corked, empty save for a little roll of paper, which proved to be the addendum to the log. The Coast Guard said the man must have tied up his own hands, fastening the knots with his teeth. The fact that a Coast Guard was the first on board may save some complications later on in the Admiralty Court, for Coast Guards cannot claim the salvage, which is the right of the first civilian entering on a derelict. Already, however, the legal tongues are wagging, and one young law student is loudly asserting that the rights of the owner are already completely sacrificed, his property being held in contravention of the statutes of mortmen, since the tiller, as emblemship, if not proof, of delegated possession is held in a dead hand. It is needless to say that the dead steersman had been reverently removed from the place where he held his honorable watch and ward till death, a steadfast as noble as that of the young Casablanca, and placed in the mortuary to await inquest. Already the sudden storm is passing, and its fierceness is abating. Crowds are scattering backward, and the sky is beginning to redden over the Yorkshire wolds. I shall send, in time for your next issue, further details of the derelict ship which found her way so miraculously into the harbor in the storm. Whitby, August 9th. The sequel to the strange arrival of the derelict in the storm last night is almost more startling than the thing itself. It turns out that the schooner is Russian from Varna and is called the Demeter. She is almost entirely in ballast of silver sand, with only a small amount of cargo, a number of great wooden boxes filled with mold. This cargo was co-signed to a Whitby solicitor, Mr. S. F. Billington of 7 The Crescent, who this morning went aboard and took formal possession of the goods consigned to him. The Russian consul, too, acting for the charter party, took formal possession of the ship and paid all harbor duties, etc. Nothing is talked about here today except the strange coincidence. The officials of the Board of Trade have been most exacting in seeing that every compliance has been made with existing regulations. As the matter is to be a 9 days wonder, They are evidently determined that there shall be no cause of other complaint. A good deal of interest was abroad concerning the dog which landed when the ship struck, and more than a few of the members of the SPCA, which is very strong in Whitby, have tried to befriend the animal. To the general disappointment, however, it was not to be found. It seems to have disappeared entirely from the town. It may be that it was frightened and made its way onto the moors, where it's still hiding in terror. There are some who look with dread on such a possibility, lest later on it should in itself become a danger, for it is evidently a fierce brute. Early this morning, a large dog, a half-breed mastiff belonging to a coal merchant close to Tate Hill Pier, was found dead on the roadway opposite its master's yard. It had been fighting, and manifestly had had a savage opponent, for its throat was torn away, and its belly was slit open as if with a savage claw. Later, by the kindness of the Board of Trade Inspector, I have been permitted to look over the logbook of the Demeter, which was in order up to within 3 days, but contained nothing of special interest except as to facts of the missing men. The greatest interest, however, is with regard to the paper found in the bottle, which was today produced at the inquest, and a more strange narrative than the two between them unfolded has not had been my lot to come across. As there is no motive for concealment, I am permitted to use them, and accordingly send you a transcript, simply omitting technical details of seamanship and supercargo. It almost seems as though the captain had been seized with some kind of mania before he had got well into blue water, and that this had developed persistently throughout the voyage. Of course, my statement must be taken cum grano, since I am writing from the dictation of a clerk of the Russian consul, who kindly translated for me, time being short. Log of the Demeter. Varna to Whitby, written 18 July, things so strange happening that I shall keep accurate note henceforth till we land. On July 6th, we finished taking in cargo, silver sand and boxes of earth. At noon set sail, east wind, fresh, crew 5 hands, 2 mates, cook, and myself, the captain. On July 11th at dawn, entering Bosphorus, boarded by Turkish customs officers, bakshish. All correct, underway at 4 p.m. On July 12th, through Dardanelles, more customs officers and flagboat of guarding squadron, bakshish again. Work of officers thorough but quick, want us off soon. At dark, passed into archipelago. On July 13th, passed Cape Matapan. Crew dissatisfied about something, seemed scared but would not speak out. On July 14th, was somewhat anxious about crew, men all steady fellows, who sailed with me before. Mate could not make out what was wrong. They only told him there was something and crossed themselves. Mate lost temper with one of them that day and struck him. Expected fierce quarrel, but all was quiet. On July 16th, mate reported in the morning that one of the crew, Petrovsky, was missing. Could not account for it. Took larboard watch 8 bells last night and was relieved by Armamov, but did not go to bunk. Men more downcast than ever. All they said was they expected something of the kind, but would not say more than there was something aboard. Mate getting very impatient with them, feared some trouble ahead. On July 17th, yesterday, one of the men, Olgarin, came to my cabin and in an awe-struck way confided to me that he thought there was a strange man aboard the ship. He said that on the watch he had been sheltering behind the deckhouse as there was a rainstorm, when he saw a tall, thin man who was not like any of the crew come up the companionway and go along the deck forward and disappear. He followed cautiously, but when he got to the bows he found no one, and the latchways were all closed. He was in a panic of superstitious fear, and I am afraid the panic may spread. To allay it, I shall today search the ship carefully from stem to stern. Later in the day, I got together the whole crew and told them, as they evidently thought there was someone on this ship, we would search from stem to stern. The first mate, angry, said it was folly, and to yield to such foolish ideas would demoralize the men. said he would engage to keep them out of trouble with a handspike. I let them take the helm, while the rest began a thorough search, all keeping abreast with lanterns. We left no corner unsearched, as there was only the big wooden boxes. There were no odd corners where a man could hide. Men, much relieved when search over, and went back to work cheerfully. First mate scowled, but said nothing. July 22nd. Rough weather last 3 days, and all hands busy with sails. No time to be frightened. Men seem to have forgotten their dread. Mate cheerfully again, and all on good terms. Praised men for work in bad weather. Past Gibraltar, and out through the straits. All well. July 24th. There seems some doom over the ship, already a hand short and entering the Bay of Biscay, with wild weather ahead. And yet last night another man lost, disappeared. Like the first, he came off his watch and was not seen again. Men all in panic of fear, and sent a round robbing, asking to have double watch as they fear to be alone. Mate angry. Fear there will be some trouble, as either he or the men will do some violence. July 28th. 4 days in hell, logging about in a sort of maelstrom in the wild tempest. No sleep for anyone, men all worn out, hardly know how to set a watch since no one fit to go on. Second mate volunteered to steer and watch, and let men snatch a few hours of sleep. Wind abating, sea still terrific, but feel them less as ship is steadier. July 29th. Another tragedy. At single watch tonight, as crew too tired to double, when morning watch came on deck, could find no one except the steersman. Raised outcry, and all came on deck. Thorough search, but no one found. Are now without second mate, and crew in a panic. Mate and I agreed to go armed henceforth, and wait for any sign of cause. July 30th. Last night, rejoiced we are nearing England. Weather fine, all sails set, retired, worn out, slept soundly, awakened by mate telling me that both man of watch and steersman missing, only self and mate, and 2 hands left to work the ship. August 1st. 2 days of fog, and not a sail sighted. Had hoped when in the English Channel to be able to signal for help or get in somewhere. Not having power to work sails, have to run before wind. Dare not lower, as could not raise them again. We seem to be drifting into some terrible doom. Mate now more demoralized than either of the men. His stronger nature seems to have worked inwardly against himself. Men are beyond fear, working solidly and patiently, with minds made up to worst. They are Russian. He is Romanian. August 2nd, midnight. Woke up from a few minutes' sleep by hearing a cry, seemingly outside my port. Could see nothing in the fog. Rushed on deck and ran against mate. Tells me he heard cry and ran, but no sign of man on watch. One more gone. Lord help us. Mate says we must be past the Straits of Dover, as in moment of fog lifting he saw North Foreland, just as he heard the man cry out. If so, we are now off in the North Sea, and only God can guide us in the fog, which seems to move with us, and God seems to have deserted us. August 3rd. At midnight I went to relieve the man at the wheel, and when I got to it, found no one there. The wind was steady, and as we ran before it, there was no yawing. I dared not leave it, so shouted for the mate. After a few seconds he rushed up on deck in his flannels. He looked wide-eyed and haggard, and I greatly fear his reason has given way. He came close to me and whispered hoarsely, with his mouth to my ear, as though fearing the very air might hear. "It is here. I know it now. On the watch last night I saw it, like a man, tall and thin and ghastly pale. It was in the bows and looking out. I crept behind it and gave it my knife, but the knife went through it, empty as the air." And as he spoke, he took the knife and drove it savagely into the space. Then he went on, "But it is here. And I'll find it. It's in the hold, perhaps, in one of those boxes. I'll unscrew them one by one and see. You work the helm." And with a warning look and his finger on the lip, he went below. There was a springing up a choppy wind, and I could not leave the helm. I saw him come out on deck again with a tool chest and lantern, and go down the forward hatchway. He's mad, stark raving mad. It's no use my trying to stop him. He can't hurt those big boxes. They are invoiced as clay, and to pull them about as harmless a thing as he can do. So here I stay and mind the helm. I write these notes. I can only trust in God and wait till the fog clears. Then if I can't steer to any harbor with the wind, that is, I shall cut down sails and lie by and signal for help. It is nearly all over now. Just as I was beginning to hope that the mate would come out calmer, for I heard him knocking away at something in the hold, and work is good for him, there came up the hatchway a sudden, startling scream, which made my blood run cold, and up on the deck he came out as if shot from a gun, a raging madman, his eyes rolling and his face convulsed with fear. Save me, he cried, and then looked round on the blanket of fog. His horror turned to despair, and in a steady voice he said, "We had better come to, Captain, for it's too late. He is there. I know the secret now. The sea will save me from him, and it is all that it's left." Before I could say a word or move forward to seize him, he sprang on the bulwark and deliberately threw himself into the sea. I suppose I know the secret too now. It was this madman who had got rid of the men one by one, and now he has followed them himself. God help me. How am I to account for all these horrors when I get to port? Will that ever be? August 4th. Still fog which the sunrise cannot pierce. I know there is a sunrise because I am a sailor. Why else I know not. I dared not go below. I dared not leave the helm, so here all night I stayed, and in the dimness of the night I saw it. Him. God forbid me, but the mate was right to jump overboard. It is better to die like a man, to die like a sailor in blue water. No man can object. But I am captain, and I must not leave my ship. But I shall baffle this fiend or monster, for I shall tie my hands to the wheel when my strength begins to fail, and along with them I shall tie that which it dare not touch, and then, come good wind or foul, I shall save my soul and honor as a captain. I am growing weaker. The night is coming on. If he can look me in the face again, I may not have time to act. If we are wrecked, mayhaps this bottle may be found, and those who find it may understand. If not, well then all men shall know that I have been true to my trust. God and the Blessed Virgin and the saints help a poor ignorant soul trying to do his duty. Of course, the verdict was an open one. There is no evidence to adduce, and whether or not the man himself committed the murders, there is now none to say. The folk here hold almost universally that the captain is simply a hero, and he is to be given a public funeral. Already it is arranged that his body is to be taken with a train of boats up to the Esk for a peace, and then brought back to Tate Hill Pier and up the Abbey steps, for he is to be buried in the churchyard on the cliff. The owners of more than 100 boats have already given up their names as wishing to follow him to the grave. No trace has ever been found of the great dog, at which there is much mourning, for, with public opinion in its present state, he would, I believe, be adopted by the town. Tomorrow we'll see the funeral, and so will end one more mystery of the sea. Mina Murray's Journal, August 8th. Lucy was very restless all night, and I too could not sleep. The storm was fearful, and as it boomed loudly among the chimney pots, it made me shudder. When a sharp puff came, it seemed to be like a distant gun. Strangely enough, Lucy did not wake, but she got up twice and dressed herself. Fortunately, each time I awoke in time and managed to undress her without waking her, and got back to bed. It is a very strange thing, this sleepwalking, for as soon as her will is thwarted in any physical way, her intention, if there be any, disappears, and she yields herself almost exactly to the routine of her life. Early in the morning we both got up and went down to the harbor to see if anything had happened in the night. There were very few people about, and though the sun was bright and the air clear and fresh, the big grim-looking waves that seemed dark themselves because the foam that toppled them was like snow, forced themselves through the mouth of the harbor, like a bullying man going through a crowd. Somehow I felt glad that Jonathan was not on the sea last night, but on land. But oh, is he on land or sea? Where is he, and how? I'm getting fearfully anxious about him. If I only knew what to do, could do anything. August 10th. The funeral of the poor sea captain today was most touching. Every boat in the harbor seemed to be there, and the coffin was carried by captains all the way from Tate Hill Pier up to the churchyard. Lucy came with me, and we went early to our old seat, which the cottage of boats went up the river to the viaduct and came down again. We had a lovely view, and saw that the procession nearly all the way. The poor fellow was laid to rest near our seat, so that we stood on it. When the time came and saw everything, poor Lucy seemed much upset. She was restless and uneasy all the time, and I cannot but think that her dreaming that night is telling on her. She is quite odd in one thing. She will not admit to me that there is any cause for restlessness, or if there be, she does not understand it herself. There is an additional cause in that poor Mr. Swales was found dead this morning on our seat, his neck being broken. He had evidently, as the doctor said, fallen back on the seat in some sort of fright, for there was a look of fear and horror on his face that the men said made them shudder. Poor dear old man. Lucy is so sweet and sensitive that she feels influences more acutely than other people do. Just now she was quite upset by a little thing, which I did not much heed, though I am myself very fond of animals. One of the men who came up here often to look for the boats was followed by his dog. The dog is always with him. They are both quiet persons. I never saw the man angry, nor heard the dog bark. During the service the dog would not come to its master, who is on the seat with us, but kept a few yards off, barking and howling. Its master spoke to it gently, and then harshly, then angrily, but it would neither come nor cease to make noise. It was in a fury, with its eyes savage, and all its hair bristling out like a cat's tail when puss is on the war-path. Finally, the man got angry, and jumped down and kicked the dog, and then took it by the scruff of the neck, and half dragged and half threw it on the tombstone on which the seat is fixed. The moment it touched the stone, the poor thing began to tremble. It did not try to get away, but crouched down, quivering and cowering, and was much in such a pitiable state of terror that I tried, though without effect, to comfort it. Lucy was full of pity too, but she did not attempt to touch the dog, but looked at it in an agonized sort of way. I greatly fear that she is of too supersensitive a nature to go through the world without trouble. She will be dreaming of this tonight, I am sure. The whole agglomeration of things, the ship steered into port by a dead man, his attitude, tied to the wheel with a crucifix and beads, the touching funeral of the dog, now furious and now in terror, will all afford material for her dreams. I think it will be best for her to go to bed tired out physically, so I shall take her on a long walk by the cliffs to Robin Hood's Bay and back. She ought not to have much inclination for sleepwalking then. Chapter 8. Mina Murray's Journal. Same day, 11 o'clock p.m. Oh, but I am tired. If it were not that I had made of my diary a duty, I should not open it tonight. We had a lovely walk. Lucy, after a while, was in gay spirits, owing, I think, to some dear cows who came nosing toward us in a field close to the lighthouse, and frightened the wits out of us. I believe we forgot everything, except, of course, personal fear. It seemed to wipe the slate clean and give us a fresh start. We had a capital severe tea at Robin Hood's Bay in a sweet little old-fashioned inn, with a bow window right over the seaweed-covered rocks of the strand. I believe we should have shocked the new woman with our appetites. Men are more tolerant, bless them. Then we walked home with some, or rather many, stoppages to rest, and with our hearts full of a constant dread of wild bulls. Lucy was really tired, and we intended to creep off to bed as soon as we could. The young curate came in, however, and Miss Westenra asked him to stay for supper. Lucy and I both a fight for it with the dusty miller. I know it was a hard fight on my part, and I am quite heroic. I think that some day the bishops might get together and see about breeding up a new class of curates who don't take supper, no matter how hard they may be pressed to, and who will know when girls are tired. Lucy is asleep and breathing softly. She has more color in her cheeks than usual and looks oh so sweet. If Mr. Homewood fell in love with her seeing her only in the drawing room, I wonder what he would say if he saw her now. Some of the new women writers will someday start an idea that men and women should be allowed to see each other asleep before proposing or accepting. But I suppose the new woman won't condescend in future to accept. She will do the proposing herself, and a nice job she will make of it too. There is some consolation in that. I'm so happy tonight because dear Lucy seems better. I really believe she has turned the corner, and that we are over her troubles with dreaming. I should be quite happy if I only knew if Jonathan, God bless, keep him. August 11th, 3 a.m. Diary again. No sleep now, so I may as well write. I am too agitated to sleep. We have had such an adventure, such an agonizing experience. I fell asleep as soon as I closed my diary. Suddenly I became broad awake and sat up with a horrible sense of fear upon me, and of some feeling of emptiness around me. The room was dark, so I could not see Lucy's bed. I stole across and felt for her. The bed was empty. I lit a match and found that she was not in the room. The door was shut but not locked, as I had left it. I feared to wake her mother, who had been more unusually ill lately, so threw on some clothes and got ready to look for her. As I was leaving the room, it struck me that the clothes she wore might give me some clue to her dreaming intention. Dressing gown would mean house. Dress outside. Dressing gown and dress were both in their places. Thank God, I said to myself, she cannot be far, as she is only in her nightdress. I ran downstairs and looked in the sitting room. Not there. Then I looked in the other rooms of the house, and with an ever-growing fear chilling my heart. Finally, I came to the hall door and found it open. It was not wide open, but the catch of the lock had not caught. The people of the house are careful to lock the door every night, so I feared that Lucy must have gone out as she was. There was no time to think of what might happen. A vague, overmastering of fear obscured all details. I took a big, heavy shawl and ran out. The clock was striking 1. I was on the crescent. There was not a soul in sight. I ran along the north terrace, but could see no sign of the white figure which I had expected. At the edge of the west cliff above the pier, I looked across the harbor to the east cliff, in hope or fear, I don't know which, of seeing Lucy in our favorite seat. There was a bright full moon with heavy black driving clouds, which threw the whole scene into a fleeting diorama of light and shade as they sailed across. For a moment or two, I could see nothing, as the shadow of the cloud obscured St. Mary's Church and all around it. Then as the cloud passed, I could see the ruins of the abbey coming into view, and as the edge of a narrow band of light, as sharp as a sword cut, moved along, the church and courtyard became gradually visible. Whatever my expression was, it was not disappointed, for there, on our favorite seat, the silver light of the moon struck a half-reclining figure, snowy white. The coming of the cloud was too quick for me to see much, for shadows shut down on light almost immediately, but it seemed to me as though something dark stood behind the seat where the figure shone and bent over it. That it was, whether man or beast, I could not tell. I did not wait to catch another glance, but flew down the stair steps to the pier and along the fish market to the bridge, which was the only way to reach the east cliff. The town seemed as dead, for not a soul did I see. I rejoiced that it was so, for I wanted no witness of Lucy's poor condition. The time and distance seemed endless, and my knees trembled and my breath came labored as I toiled up the endless steps to the abbey. I must have gone fast, yet it seemed to me that my feet were weighted with lead, and as though every joint in my body were rusty. When I got almost to the top, I could see the seat with the white figure, for I was now close enough to distinguish it even through the spells of shadow. There was undoubtedly something, long and black, bending over the half-reclining white figure. I called in fright, "Lucy, Lucy!" and something raised a head, and from there I could see a white face and red, gleaming eyes. Lucy did not answer, and I ran on to the entrance of the courtyard. As I entered, the church was between me and the seat, and for a minute or so I lost sight of her. When I came into view again, the cloud had passed, and the moonlight struck so brilliantly that I could see Lucy half reclining, with her head lying over the back of the seat. She was quite alone. There was not a sign of any living thing about. When I bent over her, I could see that she was still asleep. Her lips were parted, and she was breathing, not softly as usual with her, but in long, heavy gasps, as though striving to get her lungs full at every breath. As I came close, she put her hand in her sleep and pulled the collar of her nightdress close around her, as though she felt cold. I flung the warm shawl over her and drew the edges tight around her neck, for I dreaded lest she should get some deadly chill from the night air, unclad as she was. I feared to wake her all at once. In order to have my hands free to help her, I fastened the shawl at her throat with a big safety pin. But I must have been clumsy in my anxiety and pinched or pricked her with it, for by and by, when her breathing became quieter, she put her hand to her throat again and moaned. When I had her carefully wrapped up, I put my shoes on her feet, and then began very gently to wake her. At first she did not respond, but gradually she became more and more uneasy in her sleep, moaning and sighing occasionally. At last, as time was passing fast, and for many other reasons, I wished to get her home at once. I shook her forcibly, till finally she opened her eyes and awoke. She did not seem surprised to see me, as, of course, she did not realize all at once where she was. Lucy always wakes prettily, and even at such time, when her body must have been chilled with cold, and her mind somewhat appalled at waking unclad in a churchyard at night, she did not lose her grace. She trembled a little and clung to me. When I told her to come at once with me home, she rose without a word, with the obedience of a child. As we passed along, the gravel hurt my feet, and Lucy noticed me wince. She stopped and wanted to insist upon taking my shoes, but I would not. However, when we got to the pathway outside the churchyard, where there was a puddle of water remaining from the storm, I dabbed my feet with mud, using each foot in turn on the other, so that as we went home, no one, in case we should meet anyone, would notice my bare feet. Fortune favored us, and we got home without meeting a soul. Once we saw a man who seemed not quite sober passing along a street in front of us, but we hid in a door till he had disappeared up an opening such as there are here. Steep little courses, or winds as they call them in Scotland. My heart beat so loud all the time, sometimes I thought I should faint. I was filled with anxiety about Lucy, not only for her health, lest she should suffer from the exposure, but for her reputation in case the story should ever get wind. When we got in, and had washed our feet, and had said a prayer of thankfulness together, I tucked her into bed. Before falling asleep, she asked, even implored me, not to say a word to anyone, even her mother, about her sleepwalking adventure. I hesitated at first to promise, but on thinking of the state of her mother's health, and how the knowledge of such a thing would fret her, and think, too, of how such a story might become distorted, nay, infallibly would, in case it should leak out, I thought it wiser to do so. I hope I did right. I have locked the door, and the key is tied to my wrist, so perhaps I shall not be again disturbed. Lucy is sleeping soundly. The reflex of the dawn is high and far over the sea. Same day, noon. All goes well. Lucy slept till I woke her, and seemed not to have even changed her side. The adventure of the night does not seem to have harmed her. On the contrary, it has benefited her, for she looks better this morning than she has done in for weeks. I was sorry to notice that my clumsiness with the safety pin hurt her. Indeed, it might have been serious, for the skin of her throat was pierced. I must have pinched up a piece of loose skin and have transfixed it, for there are two little red points like pinpricks on the band of her nightdress, with a drop of blood. When I apologized and was concerned about it, she laughed and petted me, and said she did not even feel it. Fortunately, it cannot leave a scar, as it's so tiny. Same day, night. We passed a happy day. The air was clear and the sun bright, and there was a cool breeze. We took our lunch to Mulgrave Woods. Miss Westenra driving by the road, and Lucy and I walking by the cliff path and joining her at the gate. I felt a little sad myself, for I could not but feel how absolutely happy it would be to have had Jonathan with me. But there, I must only be patient. In the evening we strolled on the casino terrace and heard some good music by Safor and Mackenzie, and went to bed early. Lucy seems more restful than she has been for some time, and fell asleep at once. I shall lock the door and secure the key the same as before, though I do not expect any trouble tonight. August 12th. My expectations were wrong, for twice during the night I was awakened by Lucy trying to get out. She seemed, even in her sleep, to be a little impatient at finding the door shut, and went back to bed under a sort of protest. I woke with the dawn and heard birds chirping outside the window. Lucy woke too, and I was glad to see, even better than on the previous morning. All of her old gaiety of manner seemed to have come back, and she came and snuggled in beside me and told me all about Arthur. I told her how anxious I was about Jonathan, and then she tried to comfort me. Well, she succeeded somewhat, for though sympathy cannot alter facts, it can make them more bearable. August 13th. Another quiet day, and to bed with the key on my wrist as before. Again I awoke in the night and found Lucy sitting up in bed, still asleep, pointing to the window. I got up quietly, and pulling aside the blind, looked out. It was a bright, brilliant moonlight, and the soft effect of the light over the sea and sky, merged together in one great silent mystery, was beautiful beyond words. Between me and the moonlight flitted a great bat, coming and going in great whirling circles. Once or twice it came quite close, but was, I suppose, frightened at seeing me, and flitted away across the harbor toward the abbey. When I came back from the window, Lucy had lain down again and was sleeping peacefully. She did not stir again all night. August 14th. On the east cliff, reading and writing all day. Lucy seems to have become as much in love with the spot as I am, and it's hard to get her away from it when it's time to come home for lunch or tea or dinner. This afternoon she made a funny remark. We were coming home for dinner, and had come to the top of the steps up from the west pier and stopped to look at the view, as we generally do. The setting sun, low down in the sky, was just dropping behind Kettleness. The red light was thrown over the east cliff and the old abbey, and seemed to bathe everything in a beautiful rosy glow. We were silent for a while, and suddenly Lucy murmured to herself, "His red eyes again. They're just the same." It was such an odd expression, coming apropos of nothing, and it quite startled me. I slewed around a little so as to see Lucy well without seeming to stare at her, and saw that she was in a half-dreamy state with an odd look on her face that I could not quite make out, so I said nothing, but followed her eyes. She appeared to be looking over at her own seat, wherein was a dark figure seated alone. I was quite a little startled myself, for it seemed for an instant as if the stranger had great eyes like burning flames, but a second look dispelled the illusion. The red sunlight was shining on the windows of St. Mary's Church behind her seat, and as the sun dipped there was just sufficient change in the refraction and reflection to make it appear as if the light moved. I saw Lucy's attention to the peculiar effect, and she became herself with a start, but she looked sad all the time. It may have been that she was thinking of that terrible night up there. We never referred to it, so I said nothing, and we went home to dinner. Lucy had a headache and went to bed early. I saw her asleep and went out for a little stroll myself. I walked along the cliffs to the westward. It was full of sweet sadness, for I was thinking of Jonathan. When coming home, it was then bright moonlight, so bright that, though the front of our part of the crescent was in shadow, everything could be well seen. I threw up a glance to our window, and saw Lucy's head leaning out. I opened my handkerchief and waved it. She did not notice or make any movement whatever. Just then the moonlight crept round an angle of the building, and light fell on the window. There distinctly was Lucy with her head lying up against the side of the window-sill, and her eyes shut. She was fast asleep, and by her, seated on the window-sill, was something that looked like a good-sized bird. I was afraid she might get a chill, so I ran upstairs, but as I came into the room, she was moving back to her bed, fast asleep and breathing heavily. She was holding her hand to her throat, as though to protect it from the cold. I did not wake her, but tucked her up warmly. I have taken care that the door is locked and the window is securely fastened. She looks so sweet when she sleeps, but she is paler than is her wont, and there's a drawn, haggard look under her eyes, which I do not like. I fear she is fretting about something. I wish I could find out what it is. August 15th. Rose later than usual. Lucy was languid and tired, and slept on after we had been called. We had a happy sunrise at breakfast. Arthur's father is better, and wants the marriage to come off so soon. Lucy is full of quiet joy, and her mother is glad and sorry at once. Later on the day, she told me the cause. She is grieved to lose Lucy as her very own. She is rejoiced that she is soon to have someone to protect her. Poor dear, sweet lady. She confided to me that she has got her death warrant. She has not told Lucy, and made me a promise secrecy. Her doctor told her that within a few months at most, she must die, for her heart is weakening. At any time, even now, a sudden shock would be almost sure to kill her. We were wise to keep her from the affair of the dreadful night of Lucy's sleepwalking. August 17th. No diary for 2 whole days. I have not had the heart to write. Some sort of shadowy pull seems to be coming over our happiness. No news from Jonathan, and Lucy seems to be growing weaker, whilst her mother's hours are numbering to a close. I do not understand Lucy's fading away as she is doing. She eats well and sleeps well, and enjoys the fresh air, but all the time the roses in her cheeks are fading, and she gets weaker and more languid day by day. At night I hear her gasping as if for air. I keep the key of our door always fastened to my wrist at night, but she gets up and walks about the room and sits at the open window. Last night I found her leaning out when I woke up. When I tried to wake her, I could not. She was in a faint. When I managed to restore her, she was weak as water, and cried silently between long, painful struggles for breath. When I asked her how she came to be at the window, she shook her head and turned away. I trust her feeling ill might not be from that unlucky prick of the safety pin. I looked at her throat just now as she lay asleep, and the tiny wounds seemed not to have healed. They are still open, and if anything, larger than before, and the edges of them are faintly white. They are like little white dots with red centers. Unless they heal within a day or two, I shall insist on the doctor about seeing them. Letter. Samuel F. Billington and Son, Solicitors, Whitby, to Messrs. Carter, Patterson & Co., London. 17th of August. Dear Sirs, herewithin please receive invoice of goods sent by Great Northern Railway, same as to be delivered at Carfax, near Purfleet, immediately on receipt at Goods, Station King's Cross. The house is at present empty, but enclosed please find keys, all of which are labeled. You will please deposit the boxes, 50 in number, which form the consignment in the partially ruined building forming part of the house, and marked A on rough diagrams enclosed. Your agent will easily recognize the locality, as it is the ancient chapel of the mansion. Goods leave by train at 9:30 tonight, and will be due at King's Cross at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. As our client wishes the delivery be made as soon as possible, we shall be obliged by your having teams ready at King's Cross at the time named, and forthwith conveying goods to the destination. In order to obviate any details possible through any route requirements as to payment in your departments, we enclose check herewith for £10, receipt of which please acknowledge. Should the change be less than this amount, you can return balance. If greater, we shall at once send check for difference on hearing from you. We are to leave the keys on coming away in the main hall of the house, where the proprietor may get them on his entering the house by means of his duplicate key. Pray do not take us as exceeding the bounds of Mrs. Courtesy in pressing you in all ways to use the utmost expedition. We are, dear sirs, faithfully yours, Samuel F. Billington and Son. Letter, Messrs. Carter, Patterson and Co., London, to Messrs. Billington and Son, Whitby. August 21st. Dear Sirs, we beg to acknowledge £10 received and to return check of £1.17, 9d, amount of overplus, as shown in receipt account herewith. Goods are delivered in exact accordance with instructions. The keys left in parcel in main hall as directed. We are, dear sirs, yours respectfully, Professor Carter, Patterson and Co. Mina Murray's Journal, August 18th. I am happy today and right sitting on the seat in the churchyard. Lucy is so much better. Last night she slept well all night and did not disturb me once. The roses seemed coming back already in her cheeks, though she is still sadly pale and wan-looking. If she were in any way anemic, I could understand it, but she is not. She is in gay spirits and full of life and cheerfulness. All the morbid reticence seems to have passed from her, and she has just reminded me, as if I needed any reminding, of that night, and that it was here, on this very seat, I found her asleep. As she told me, she tapped playfully with the heel of her boot on the stone slab and said, "My poor little feet don't make much noise then. I dare say poor old Mr. Swales would have told me it was because I did not want to wake up Geordie." As she was in such a communicative humor, I asked her if she had dreamed at all that night. Before she answered, that sweet, puckered look came to her forehead, which Arthur, I call him Arthur from her habit, says he loves, and indeed, I don't wonder that he does. Then she went on in a half-dreaming kind of way, as if trying to recall it to herself. I didn't quite dream, but it all seemed to be very real. I only wanted to be here in this spot. I don't know why, for I was afraid of something. I don't know what. I remember, though, I suppose I was asleep, passing through the streets and over the bridge. A fish leapt as I went by, and I leaned over to look at it. I heard lots of dogs howling. The whole town seems as if it must be full of dogs all howling at once as I went up the steps. Then I had a vague memory of something long and dark with red eyes, just as we saw in the sunset, and something very sweet and very bitter around me at once. Then I seemed sinking into a deep green water. There was a singing in my ears, as I have heard there is to drowning men. Then everything seemed passing away from me. My soul seemed to go out from my body and float about in the air. I seem to remember that once the West Lighthouse was right under me, and then there was a sort of agonizing feeling as if I were in an earthquake, and I came back and found you shaking my body. I saw you do it before. I felt you. Then she began to laugh. It seemed a little uncanny to me, and I listened to her breathlessly. I did not quite like it, and thought it better not to keep her mind on the subject, so we drifted on to another subject, and Lucy was like her old self again. When we got home, the fresh breeze had braced her up, and her pale cheeks were really more rosy. Her mother rejoiced when she saw her, and we all spent a very happy evening together. August 19th. Joy, joy, joy. Although not all joy, at last, news of Jonathan. The dear fellow has been ill. That's why he did not write. I'm not afraid to think it or say it, now that I know. Mr. Hawkins sent me on the letter. He wrote himself, oh so kindly. I am to leave in the morning and go over to Jonathan and help to nurse him if necessary, and to bring him home. Mr. Hawkins says it would not be a bad thing if we were to be married out there. I have cried over the good sister's letter till I can feel it wet against my bosom where it lies. It is of Jonathan, and must be near to my heart, for he is in my heart. My journey is all mapped out and my luggage ready. I am only taking one chance of dress. Lucy will bring my trunk to London and keep it till I send for it may be that I must write no more. I must keep to say to Jonathan, my husband. The letter that he has seen and touched must comfort me till we meet. Letter. Sister Agatha, Hospital of St. Joseph and St. Mary, Budapest, to Miss Mina Murray. August 12th. Dear Madam, I write by desire of Mr. Jonathan Harker, who is himself not strong enough to write. though progressing well thanks to God and St. Joseph and St. Mary. She has been under our care for nearly 6 weeks, suffering from a violent brain fever. He wishes me to convey his love, and to say that by this post I write for him to Mr. Peter Hawkins, Exeter, to say, with his dutiful respects, that he is sorry for his delay, and that all of his work is completed. He will require some few weeks' rest in our sanatorium in the hills, but will then return. He wishes me to say that he has not sufficient money with him, and that he would like to pay for his staying here, so that others who need shall not be wanting for help. Believe me, yours with sympathy and all blessings, Sister Agatha. P.S. My patient being asleep, I open this to let you know something more. He has told me all about you, and that you are shortly to be his wife. All blessings to you both. He has had some fearful shock, and so says our doctor. In his delirium his ravings have been dreadful, of wolves and poison and blood, of ghosts and demons, and I fear to say of what. Be careful of him always, that there may be nothing to excite him of that kind for a long time to come. The traces of such an illness as his do not lightly die away. We should have written long ago, but we knew nothing of his friends, and there was nothing on him, nothing that anyone could understand. He came in this train from Klostenberg, and the guard was told by the station master that he rushed onto the station shouting for a ticket home. Seeing from his violent demeanor that he was English, they gave him a ticket for the furthest station on the way thither from the train reached. Be assured that he is well cared for, and he has won all hearts by his sweetness and gentleness. He is truly getting on well. Yet I have no doubt will in a few weeks be all himself. But be careful of him for safety's sake. There are, I pray God and St. Joseph and St. Mary, many, many happy years for you both. Dr. Seward's Diary, August 19th. Strange and sudden change in Renfield last night. About 8 o'clock he began to get excited and sniff about as a dog does when setting. The attendant was struck by his manner, and knowing my interest in him, encouraged him to talk. He is usually respectful to the attendant and at times servile, but tonight the man tells me he was quite haughty, but would not condescend to talk with him at all. All he would say was this: "I do not want to talk to you. You do not count now, the master is at hand." The attendant thinks it is some sudden form of religious mania which has seized him. If so, we must look out for squalls, for a strong man with homicidal and religious mania at once might be dangerous. The combination is a dreadful one. At 9 o'clock I visited him myself. His attitude to me was the same that to the attendant. In his sublime self-feeling, the difference between myself and the attendant seemed to him as nothing. It looks like religious mania, and he will soon think that he himself is God. In these infinitesimal distinctions between man and man are too paltry for an omnipotent being. How these madmen give themselves away. The real God taketh heed lest a sparrow fall. But the God created from human vanity sees no difference between an eagle and a sparrow. Oh, if men only knew. For half an hour or more, Renfield kept getting excited in greater and greater degree. I did not pretend to be watching him, but I kept strict observation on all the same. All at once, that shifty look came into his eyes which we always see when a man has seized an idea, and with it the shifty movement of the head and back, which asylum attendants come to know all well. He became quite quiet, and went and sat on the edge of his bed resignedly, and looked into space with lackluster eyes. I thought I would find out if his apathy were real or only assumed, and tried to lead him to talk of his pets, a theme which had never failed to excite his attention. At first he made no reply, but at length said testedly, "Bother them all, I do not care to pin about them." "What?" I said. "You don't mean to tell me you don't care about spiders?" Spiders at present are his hobby, and the notebook is filling up with columns of small figures. He answered to this enigmatically. "The bridemaidens rejoice the eyes that wait the coming of the bride, But when the bride draweth nigh, then the maiden shall not touch the eyes that are filled. He would not explain himself, but remained obstinately seated on his bed all the time I remained with him. I am weary tonight, and low in spirits. I cannot think of Lucy and how different things might have been if I don't sleep at once. Chloral, the modern Morpheus. I must be careful not to let it grow into a habit. No, I shall take none tonight. I have thought of Lucy, and shall not dishonor her by mixing the two. If need be, tonight shall be sleepless. Later. Glad I made the resolution, gladder that I kept to it. I had lain tossing about and heard the clock strike only twice, when the night watcher came to me, sent up from the ward, to say that Renfield had escaped. I threw on my clothes and ran down at once. My patient is too dangerous a person to be roaming about. These ideas of this might work out dangerously with strangers. The attendant was waiting for me. He said he had seen him not 10 minutes before, seemingly asleep in his bed, when he had looked through the observation trap in the door. His attention was called by the sound of a window being wrenched out. He ran back and saw his feet disappear through the window, and had at once sent up for me. He was only in his night gear, and cannot be far off. The attendant thought it would be more useful to watch where he should go than to follow him, as he might lose sight of him whilst getting out of the building by the door. He is a bulky man, and couldn't get through the window. I am thin, so, with his aid, I got out, but feet foremost, and as we were only a few feet above the ground, laid and unhurt, the attendant told me that the patient had gone to the left, and had taken a straight line, so I ran as quickly as I could. As I got through the belt of trees, I saw a white figure scale the high wall which separates our ground from those of the deserted house. I ran back at once, told the watchman to get 3 or 4 men immediately, and follow me into the grounds of Carfax, in case our friend might be more dangerous. I got a ladder myself, and crossing the wall, dropped down to the other side. I could see Renfield's figure just disappearing behind the angle of the house, so I ran after him. On the far side of the house I found him pressed close against the old iron-bound oak door of the chapel. He was talking, apparently to someone, but I was afraid to go near enough to hear what he was saying, lest I might frighten him, and he should run off. Chasing an errant swarm of bees is nothing to following a naked lunatic, when the fit of escaping is upon him. After a few minutes, however, I could see that he did not take note of anything around him, and so ventured to draw near to him, the more so as my men had now crossed the wall and were closing him in. I heard him say, "I am here to do your bidding, master. I am your slave, and you will reward me, for I shall be faithful. I have worshipped you long and afar off. Now you are near, I await your commands, and you will not pass me by, will you, dear master, in your distribution of good things?" He is a selfish old beggar, anyhow. He thinks of the loaves and fishes even when he believes he is in a real presence. His manias make a startling combination. When we closed in on him, he fought like a tiger. He is immensely strong, for he was more like a wild beast than a man. I never saw a lunatic in such paroxysm of rage before, and I hope I shall not again. It's a mercy that we have found out his strength and his danger in good time. With strength and determination like this, he might have done wild work before he was caged. He is safe now at any rate. Jack Shepherd himself couldn't get free from the strait waistcoat that keeps him restrained, and he is chained to the wall in the padded room. His cries are at times awful, but the silences that follow are more deadly still, for he means murder in every turn and movement. Just now, he spoke coherent words for the first time. "I shall be patient, master. It is coming. So I took the hint and came to. I was too excited to sleep, but this diary has quieted me, and I feel I shall get some sleep tonight. Thank you. That was part 4 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Thank you for listening, and good night.